Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined in person right next to me by Santiago Beltran. Santi, we're coming at everyone live right after the City Sprint 5K. How you feeling after the race?
I'm tired, but it was fun. It was fun to finish the race inside the stadium and see a lot of our listeners. That was fun. That was great.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting fallout, that's for sure. And why not? It's the last fallout of the season. We had the rainiest of rain games possible with no delay, so at least there was that. But there's definitely plenty to get to on this match. So we're going to give everyone a moment to file in if you're listening to us live. If you're not, you can probably skip ahead for a few seconds and we'll get started with the show. But this is a weird fallout in the sense that we're not actually going to be starting with anything from the match. Pre-match, we had our own little excitement that we need to dive into first. Without going too deep into it right now, Santi, did this one catch you by surprise?
Yes and no, because somehow I found out like 10 minutes earlier that it was going to be announced, but I was like, oh my God, I have to keep this to myself for all these 10, 15 minutes. But it was a great moment. It was a great moment. I was just told to be ready for an announcement around 8:09, 8:08. So I was like, oh, this is probably it. And then the video the team put together was great. And it's great. The only thing that I saw, Matt, on your show notes is it looks like he's going to be a DP.
Yeah, that's the report anyway. So we'll dive into that here in just a second. And I'm going to leverage our friend Aaron Leak in the chat because I saw him at the City Sprint 5K. So Aaron, let us know if our audio is coming in okay, because we're obviously together here for the first time, and we're using the nice little flyover mic that I have that I usually use for pressers, but want to make sure that our audio is doing okay before we get started on this. On the Bürki front, I am and am not surprised at the same time to see that he is supposedly a designated player. He's been a designated player before for City.
Mm-hmm.
I've criticized that because he was at least on a max TAM deal. So there's a lot of let's say possibilities around that. So thank you everyone for the audio check. Appreciate that. And with that, let's get rolling with the pod, wasting absolutely no time. Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. Thank you for joining us on this finale edition of Flyover Footy's Fallout, a look at a 2-2 draw against Real Salt Lake. I am joined, as always, by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran. If you're joining us live, we are coming at you immediately following the City Sprint 5K on Sunday morning that we both finished inside of Energizer Park. It was an absolute blast. The team put on a fantastic event. It was awesome meeting so many people downtown West. Thank you so much for those of you who know us, who said hi, because it means absolutely the world to us. We love that so much. And with that, I'll bring in Santiago Beltran, who did admittedly finish ahead of me in the race.
Oh, we didn't have to say that, but yeah, it was fun. It was fun to be finishing the race inside the stadium, see a lot of people we know saying hi, and it was a great atmosphere, a great turnout. The finish line looked very crowded because everybody wanted to take pictures by the field, but the team did a great job, and it was a great way to end the season. Although this afternoon we'll be back for a City 2 game.
And with that, so Aaron Leak in the chat asks, last City fallout, but hopefully a few City 2 fallouts. Hopefully a few City 2 fallouts. I have it at the end of our notes, but we're not shutting things down on Flyover Footy until January. We'll be back regularly. This Thursday we'll be back with a full kind of City recap of the season, look at the entire everything that just went down, kind of deep dive it all before we shut the book on 2025. But as long as City 2 goes, we'll cover what we can, and also anytime news breaks. Obviously, we're still going to be here following each big breaking news, the sporting director, the head coach, player announcements. We'll be here in the offseason. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, the biggest possible news was honestly not the 2-2 draw. The biggest possible news is that City, in the most grandiose possible way to announce a player contract, had a video prepped for everyone in Energizer Park that was announcing, and it took me by surprise because if you're watching the video, it starts playing and you have Roman Bürki. It was a nice little video clip of something, and then all of a sudden there is a contract on that video. And I turned to my friend Jeff behind me, and I looked in the stands, and it was no way. There's absolutely no way this is happening right now. And sure enough, St. Louis City announced right before the match that they had re-signed goalkeeper and team captain Roman Bürki to a 2-year extension through 2027 with a club option for 2028. This is the news everybody's been waiting for. It's kind of funny how this works out, because we just had the conversation last week about Klaus and how, because he's on a club option, they don't announce those midseason. But Berkey's contract was up. Totally different scenario in the back and forth and negotiations that had been happening with, as we find out, Diego Gigliani. It seemed pretty exclusively. It's possible that Bürki had been negotiating with Hackworth as well, but Diego's the one who gets credit for this, both on the press release and from Roman Bürki himself post-game. So let's dive into some of the quotes before we get our reactions. Diego Gigliani said, Roman Bürki said, "Every day I step on the pitch, I feel the support and passion from the city and our incredible fans, and it pushes me to be the best I can for this team. It's an honor to wear this badge. I believe in the club's future and want to play a key part in helping it achieve its goals." Diego Gigliani, president and general manager of St. Louis City, says Roman is an extremely important part of this club and has been since he first arrived. His leadership on and off the pitch, his professionalism, his commitments to high standards, and his connection with our fans and this community embody everything St. Louis City SC stands for. As we enter a new chapter in the club's young existence, we're thrilled to see such a key player commit his future to what we are building. We're confident he will continue to play a pivotal role in helping this team reach new heights in the years ahead. And it just only builds from here, where it's also reported as part of this by Tom Bogert on X and Blue Sky that Roman Bürki will occupy a designated player spot. We haven't received official word from the club on this yet. I hope to get some information this week on that, but it may or may not be different than what Bürki, his previous contract was, which was a max TAM deal. It escalated each year to the maximum allowed TAM player limit, which was like the maximum salary budget charge plus $1 million. So like 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, so on and so forth. We have yet to see how this will change that. But if we take it at face value right now, this means that City will have Marcel Hartl and Roman Bürki as designated players for 2026, with Falou Fall, Jake Girdwood-Reich, and presumably Songbin Zhang as U22s, assuming Songbin's option is picked up. If it's picked up, he's a U22 next year. That's one of the reasons I think it's a no-brainer for him. But this still gives City flexibility to build their roster in 2026. They have not as much flexibility, maybe, so having one DP slot filled here, it gives you either room to sign one DP or one U22 and get that extra $2 million in GAM. The difference maker ability is still on the table. So this changes a little bit, the whole playing field, but even if he's a designated player, we still have the ability to go out and find that extra difference maker. So Santi, break it all down. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I really hope it's a max time deal so the club has more flexibility. I was surprised when I saw that he could be a designated player, because that's something we have been talking about. Like, the club needs the flexibility to bring those other pieces and maybe another DP, and then still have a U22 slot available. But for now, we'll wait for more news. But I think it's good that he was resigned. I had a feeling that was going to happen when during the presser early in the week he was talking about 2026 and preseason, and then he was making jokes about, oh yeah, I'm not retiring. Yeah, I'll have a preseason. And then he was like, no, I cannot give you more information. But from just hearing that, I was like, I think he's gonna get signed. But I wasn't expecting an announcement last night. I found out like 15 minutes earlier, so I had to contain myself and wait for the announcement. But that was a great way for the club to do it. He has been the leader of the team, and it's great to have him back for 2 years at least, possibly a third. The only question for me is like, okay, now you have your plan for your goalie, but I think one of the things the club needs to start thinking about is the goalie for the future. Needs to continue working on the development for that goalie in 2-3 years.
Yeah, so there's kind of three aspects to this I want to break down before we get into the match. One of them is the goalie continuity, one of them is the roster itself, and the other is kind of the front man, the sporting director, GM type conversation that's occurring. On that front, the goalkeeper front, I think it signals a couple of things, not just our desire to have Roman Bürki as the centerpiece of everything going forward, but also potentially that City's not ready to pass the mantle on to anyone else. Ben Lund's contract is up as well. So it's not a given that Ben Lund is going to be back. Beyond that, you have guys like Christian Oliveras, Nick Bishop, Colin Welsh, the super draft pick, that have seen the most minutes with City 2 at least. And this may signal that they're not ready to move on from Roman Bürki. They don't have that confidence necessarily in somebody else to take the mantle, just as much as it means that Roman Bürki means all of that to St. Louis. And everything Diego said in the press release is true. So I do look to see what happens underneath Roman Bürki, from the backup position to the City 2, at those levels, to see if we might have continuity in the goalkeeper position to carry on from Roman Bürki in a couple of years. But we do have a couple of years now. You could have Colin Welsh. You could have even Ben Lund still take a backup role and then carry on from Roman Bürki. The goalkeeper position is totally different than anybody else. You get to your 28, 29, 30 years old, you're in the prime of your career, as opposed to, starting to be on the back hill, on the downturn of your career. So there's a lot from that perspective. On the roster note, there's some questions obviously about what this means in the overall build. But I think Josh Biggs in the chat says the problem isn't necessarily the top of the roster or the bottom, it's the middle and the midfield. To me, this doesn't really impact much on that front. In Major League Soccer, you have your 2 or 3 DP slots, you have your 3 or 4 U22 slots, and then you have everything else. So there's a massive chunk in the middle of the roster that you can spend more on if you spend wisely on your top few spots. So, we've got a number 10 and we've got a goalkeeper occupying our DP slots at face value right now. We have a right winger, we have a center back, and who knows what in JGR occupying our U22s. So you're having key pieces fit here. You can fill out the rest of those slots. So if you have let's say you fill your last DP slot with an attacking midfielder or another striker, you have money to work with. You have a lot of general allocation money to where you can sign an Ilie Sanchez level number 6, potentially. You could pay him 6, 7, 8, even $1 million. You can make him a TAM level player because you do have that flexibility that exists underneath your DPs and your U22. So I don't know that I would worry yet until we see what occurs with the rest of the player options, and what kind of TAM and GAM we actually do have available going into 2026. And then on the leadership front, I had an interesting conversation Sunday morning early while I was doing some show notes before the race with Matt Doyle over on Blue Sky. So if you want to check that back and forth, go check out my Blue Sky. But it was basically that from the national perspective, there seems to be a knee-jerk reaction to this Bürki news that maybe it's Diego who takes over the sporting director job. Because Bürki had Diego was in the press release as quoted. Bürki had talked about Diego. I'll read Bürki's quotes post game in a second, but that's kind of where the national landscape may be shifting here in a moment. What Roman Bürki said post game on why he's returning next year, he said, I love what I'm doing. I love to come into the facility every day. I love the guys here. I love the people around me. And so that's the most important thing. There are more important things than just soccer. So I feel very good and very happy here. That's very important to perform. And I just have the feeling that this chapter is not over yet for me. I want to achieve something. I want to attack again next season personally and obviously with the team. Bürki then went on the future of the team. And this is where it's really interesting to say, I had a lot of talks with Diego. And they showed me what they want to do. They showed me things that I can't tell here because they trust me. They show me what they want to build here, what their plan is, and who they're trying to bring in. So for me, it's just a sign that they're actually very interested in making the club a winning team and bringing a winning culture into the club. That's exactly what I want to see. So this to me, without a sporting director in place, Diego clearly sells Roman on a vision. He sells Roman. Maybe it's Diego and Hackworth, but there's lobbying that has been done, promises probably made to Roman Bürki. And from Diego's perspective, at least, it is what the ownership and what the organization is able and willing to spend, I think. Diego's been honest in the past with us, and I still take him at face value on he doesn't get in the weeds on the technical side. He doesn't go into overriding scouts or the sporting director. He kind of tries to stay in his lane, but he asks questions. He's involved in the decision making. He is over the sporting department in addition to everything else as the president of the club. So the role is a little more defined for me with Diego. The Bürki thing that I made the point to Matt Doyle on is completely different. The unique nature of who Roman Bürki is and what he means to this organization was something that was, I think, carrying from Lutz. They wanted to get him on board. He wanted to stay on board. This is a continuation of what Lutz had built. And so getting Roman Bürki on before a sporting director isn't signaling to me that it's Diego's show and he's being more hands-on in the sporting department. It was continuing what Lutz had already started. It was that handoff of the negotiations that, if you remember back in the summer, we were worried how that would occur. Would there be a lot of concern that with Lutz out of the picture, that there would be no continuity in the Roman Bürki conversations and that this could cost us Bürki? Come to find out, Diego he took that baton and he carried it in the negotiations and he got it across the finish line. So now with Roman Bürki secured, I think a lot of the other decisions, maybe the player options or not, but a lot of the other decisions on who we're bringing in are waiting until the sporting director is signed.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I don't think Diego is going to take over as a sporting director. You mentioned it. He had already said that he doesn't get on the technical side or things like that. But Roman Bürki's case is different. It's a player that the team was already negotiating with. So I don't think for that you needed to have your new sporting director. It was a continuation of what was being done. Just looking at some of the comments on the chat, just wanted to get back to something Aaron Leak said. He was asking if Olivares could be a goalie of the future. To me, I would like that. We'll see what happens. Obviously, Ben Lund's contract is up. He had good showing this year when he came in to replace Bürki. But that's what I meant when I see goalie of the future. Like, you need a young guy that you can have here for multiple years. And maybe between Lund and Olivares, you bridge that gap for the next 2 to 3 years. But I would really like one guy from CD2 or from the academy to start getting some minutes, or at least sitting on the bench. And then if something happens to Bürki or he needs a break, they can also get that experience. So we'll see what happens with the player options. Obviously, with Ben Lund's contract being up, I don't think we're going to find out about that one until the next few weeks.
And the other question I'll finish on, STL City Italian in the chat, did Bürki bring up hack involvement in contract talks? Not from what we can see, not post game, not in the press release. There hasn't been anything specifically mentioned about his conversations with John Hackworth, though I think it's easy to assume that Hackworth was at least in the room and a part of those conversations. But this one's not a massive thing to read into for me because Diego's leading those conversations. He's the one in charge of the organization right now. He's co-sporting director, co-interim sporting director with John Hackworth. They're sharing the responsibilities. And until we get a new sporting director, whether it's Hackworth or otherwise, I don't expect Diego to be doing too much more as far as especially bringing in players. Now, maybe he and Hackworth are making decisions on player options that they can have that ready to go for a sporting director to present to them almost. I think that makes sense to help get out in front of that and to make these decisions as quickly as possible. Bürki's totally different in a lot of these conversations to me. So that's my take on Diego, on Bürki and everything. But otherwise, this is the news that everyone wanted to hear. There are very few people. And I think the only possible concern that we're going to be monitoring is the DP status. So knowing, is he a full-on DP? Is there any ability to buy him down? Those are the only question marks that remain. Everything else, locking a keeper of the caliber of Roman Bürki in for 2, possibly 3 years, that's the thing. That is the biggest thing we could have asked for heading into the offseason that we now find ourselves in right now. Anything else on Bürki before we get into the match?
Just that I didn't expect the team to announce that before the end of the season. Obviously, it was the last game. Take advantage of the people being in the stadium. Yep. It's not going to change anything about the game. But that was really a surprise, a good surprise. But I'm sure nobody was expecting this.
Absolutely not. Definitely. I know I was not at all. So kudos to City for putting on a show and making it a spectacle in the best possible way. So I think that got the biggest ovation of the night, maybe outside the goals, but biggest ovation of the night in my eyes. So with that said, let's pivot over to the actual match. Let's talk about the 2-2 draw against Real Salt Lake. And we'll start here where we usually do with our starting 11. Roman Bürki in net, obviously. Back line of Conrad Vollum, Falou Fall, Kyle Hebert, and Thomas Totlin. A midfield duo of Edu Leuven and Chris Durkin. An attacking trio of Mackay Joyner, Marcel Hartl, Songbin Zhang, and a striker of Klaus. So a 4-2-3-1 with some very important notables. You had Kyle Hebert over Timo Baumgartel, replacing Henry Kessler, who was not on the matchday roster at all. Kessler was carrying a questionable designation into this match, couldn't go, but Kyle Hebert steps in over Timo Baumgartel. That's a big thing. And it obviously impacted some of the goals, I think. So we'll talk about more of that in a minute. But Mackay Joyner, on the positive, Mackay Joyner made his first MLS start ever. And he started what I would say over potentially Celio Pompeu, Simon Betcher, those kinds of players. Celio Pompeu, who didn't even feature in this match, which is kind of interesting and notable, especially as City 2 has their playoff game on Sunday night and what that means for Joyner. The other interesting note, Conrad Vollum, again at left back, over Devin Padelford. It created a lot of consistency from the previous week against Austin, from before, when you were able to. So Edu Leuven pops right back in the lineup now that he's available. Henry Kessler had to leave. He wasn't fit. So Kyle Hebert is the biggest question. We had talked about Mackay Joyner, and really the only consideration for Joyner on not starting would have been City 2. But this is interesting to note for me, only because it's proof in the pudding of what Critchley had said, that he talked with Hackworth and they decided that the focus and the priority is on City. This is putting your money where your mouth is and saying, all right, you say the focus is on City, let's start Mackay Joyner, give him a run out. And they did. So I was pleased to see that. The only question mark was, to me, Kyle Hebert.
Well, Kyle Hebert, he's always there. He's always available to play in that center back position. And yeah, you can point at the goals, but I think overall he did a good job. He shows he can be reliable at that position. The biggest surprise to me was Joyner. Not that he started, but just the amount of time he played. When I saw him started, I went back and thought about Chris's remarks. Like, yeah, the first team is the priority, and yeah, he's right. It's good to give him some minutes in MLS play, but I was like, okay, Joyner is gonna play the first half, and then second half Celio comes in to finish the game. So 45 minutes, he will be available tomorrow. Maybe not to start, but at least to come second half and play extra time if needed. But then he started the second half too. And then Max Orley also came in late in the second half, but I don't think that's going to impact his availability for today. But I think Joyner is a big question mark just for the City 2 game. Maybe the team is confident that they don't need him to start, that the guys they have can make a difference. But that, to me, that was a surprise. Maybe not the start, but the fact that he played for so long.
And we'll get our predictions out for City 2 right now, because if you're listening to this on a Monday or Tuesday, you'll already know the result. But I think this means Joyner's not starting very, very clearly for City 2. But my theory that I was telling people at the City Sprint 5K is that if it's a close game, maybe we're down a goal, up a goal, it's a tight contest going into the 80th minute or so, Joyner, or we're drawn, especially if we're even going into 80th minute, I can see Joyner subbing in, because you want him available for PKs. He is as sure of a thing as you're going to find on this roster for PKs, leading the MLS Next Pro League in both attempts and conversions. So you need him at the end if you're planning on or thinking it could possibly go to extra time and then PKs. But otherwise, Emil Jääskeläinen is available. His second yellow was rescinded, so he's available for this match on Sunday night. You have Jääskeläinen, you have McSorley, you have Caden Glover, and then one of Mateo Kidd or Van Kuzane. That's your starting four as far as the attack goes to me. And Mackay Joyner would obviously enhance that, but they prioritize City. And so now you look at bringing in Joyner at the end of the game if you absolutely need to. And I know Joyner's going to fight for it. He did last time. McSorley's fought for it before. I think in general, what I've heard is that the staff says 90 minutes total for a weekend is kind of what they're looking at. So you look at what Brendan McSorley did coming in late on Saturday night, you can expect the inverse. You can expect McSorley to start and then go possibly 70, 75 or so for City 2 at the most. And then Joyner, the opposite, where he could come in for the dozen or couple dozen minutes at the end of a game. I don't think it hamstrings City 2 because we've seen City 2 succeed without Mekhi Joyner in the lineup. And so I would expect them to continue doing the same.
Yeah, and they could be up by 2 goals and not even need a
Exactly.
Joyner, and the conversation is over. Like, you could look back and say, oh, that's great that he got his first start.
Exactly.
He didn't have to wait until 2026, you know?
Yeah, and it's a good thing for him to be carrying into the offseason. That's a good confidence booster. Joyner handled himself pretty well. He had a few moments where there was some kind of rudimentary type plays, but he also had a nice shot on goal. He had some good moments in transition and space. So I thought Joyner played pretty well.
Yeah, he had a good showing for me. Showed that he belongs in MLS, and hopefully that will continue building up in 2026. We'll find out more about what this new vision is, what was sold to Bürki. But I really hope to see some of these younger guys getting more minutes for 2026.
And one last thing on this front, on the wish they were able to announce a new Klaus contract too. He's earned it. And yes, Tim, I hope to see you at City 2 tonight. But the difference is the option, the club option. And I just want to reiterate that because I hope that's not a talking point this week on why Bürki and not Klaus. But I will say that Bürki, having said post-game that Diego told him the vision, told him what they're wanting to do with players, who they want to, the types of players they want to bring in, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they told him we're bringing Klaus back. But you just can't announce that because it's a club option type thing during the season. And so I expect some of those players, if they're going to pick up the option, maybe they'll tell the players privately before they tell them publicly. So that could be a thing where Klaus, maybe he's being informed now they're going to pick up his option. We don't know that yet, but I think Klaus is almost along the lines of Song Bin Jong, where it's probably a sure of a thing because Klaus will now be a TAM level player. So we'll find out more on that pretty soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's a no-brainer if you pick up Klaus's option. But yeah, I think since you have so many players, you couldn't go, at least to me, like you can like inform one player, and then what about the other 15, 16 players? They have to wait for a few weeks or even a month. It's not good even for the team environment. But maybe privately he already knows, but the team is not going to announce that publicly.
That would be a nice thing to do, admittedly. So let's look at some big themes. Let's look at some of the really good things and the couple of bad things that happened in this game. The biggest thing for me in this match that crucially had the guys finish the season having good control of the game overall. I noted that they limited RSL's chances to few and far between. No really sustained moments of pressure, meaning multiple shots on goal in a single sequence and a couple back-to-back sequences. Looking at the stat sheet, you can see that Real Salt Lake had shots at the 2-minute mark, the 17-minute mark, the 32-minute mark, 37 minutes, 59 minutes, they had a couple shots. 77 minutes was another shot, and 90 was another. So you're talking 10, 15, 20 minutes in between shot attempts. And this, to me, is really indicative of how the game flowed. You had City, both teams we knew would be attempting to counter, go back and forth, not really sustain possession significantly. And I think this plus the field tilt tells me that St. Louis was more effective at keeping the ball in the final third, getting shot attempts, and they were preventing RSL because RSL in the first half, it was almost 50-50 in possession, but RSL was never consistently in our attacking third. They were always hitting on the counter, and then we were driving them away. And the only really quality opportunities they had were really I would say almost 100% given shots at 17 and 32 that we'll talk about in a few minutes that were created off of counterattacks that took our center backs out of position. So on the field tilt battle, Santi, I felt really strong that what we were doing in not just being in the final third, but it was equaling volume of shots taken and on goal. So St. Louis had 26 shots in this match with 6 on target. Real Salt Lake had 8 with 3 on target. In the field tilt battle, which is the kind of looking at how often a team is in the final third, we had a 256 to 149 advantage in passes into the opposition half. So 256 to 149 over the game. In passes in the final third, 176 to 59. We were living in their final third a lot more than they were on those quick strikes that they had. And finally, touches in the opposition box for the game, 39 to 14. So this almost reminded me of a kind of game, well, at least it could have if we hadn't scored that goal at the end. It reminded me of, what was it, the Dallas game?
The Dallas game.
With like 60 crosses where we were up a man and we were legitimately living in their final third and they were just bunkering and hoping for a draw that they got. But this match was one where I think because of Klaus's late goal, it was a little different in what the narrative is now, because you have all of these volume of shots advantages over RSL. You have the field tilt advantage. And so I do think that Critchley's game plan more or less worked overall, minus those two the two mistakes I think that you could probably attribute to our center backs.
Yeah, and it's a game of moments, and yeah, the team overall, as you mentioned, did a good job controlling the game overall. But then you just have two moments. You think about it. Real Salt Lake had three shots on goal. Two of them ended up in a goal, and yeah, it's just that things the team needs to continue working on. Edu Leuven on his post game availability mentioned, yeah, at times there was a lot of space available for RSL on the counter. That's something we need to shore up. And even after, and I know we're gonna go when we talk second half adjustments, but the team adjusted to that. But it's just that you still need to get to that 90-minute consistent performance. And yeah, the team came back from two goals down, and the first goal RSL scored was when City was controlling the game and doing a good job. But it's also part of it is a lot of chances were missed last night. You could have a score early on. It would have been great to see a win. In the end, the team was able to come back. I don't know, Matt, if you noticed, but from where I was, I could see Real Salt Lake's coach like going crazy when they announced 7 minutes. He was like, "No,
Yeah,
what the hell?" And the games in at San Jose and at Vancouver were already over, so they were desperate for the game to end. And
yes.
I was hoping for a third goal. I think Energizer Park will have exploded with a comeback win.
Well, then that's the other facet too, is it's not just were we successful or not in what we were attempting to implement and finding that equalizer late in the game, but it was knowing what Real Salt Lake was doing at the time. And that's an important story in this as well. Aaron mentioned in the chat too, that our match was late. We had a long first half stoppage. And so by the end of the game, by the end of that second half stoppage beginning, RSL knew what they needed to do to make the playoffs, right? They knew that a win would obviously get them in, but a draw would be enough. And so they bunkered down more than anything to prevent us from having those extra opportunities. That is a factor in this, just like it was a factor in the Dallas game on what we were able to do. Other things that I noticed, and I want to pick up on the second half adjustment really quick. David Critchley mentioned post game that at halftime regarding Chris Durkin, there was a change made, a conversation had regarding City's defensive transition stability. Critchley said on that change, I think the information at halftime was to speak to Chris Durkin specifically, because when you had Chris, Conrad, and Tots all releasing, all go forward, that's when we were the most vulnerable. And I felt like one of them had to stay back and help in the transition moments. The way the flow of the game was going, we were so successful in the wide areas attacking, whether that was starting the attack with Conrad off the dribble, but finishing it with Tots. But I felt like down the middle of the field, we could have had Chris be a little bit more in a little bit more of a stable position. Critchley finished by saying, so we had Chris sit back a little bit more reserved, a little bit deeper for these moments, so we could continue with the success out wide. And I think having a +1 in those moments in the second half really helped us to not conceding too much transition. And that was a big difference maker, because in the first half, you were vulnerable when those transition moments happened, and it was Hebert and Fall, and Fall took himself out of position on at least one, but you didn't have the numbers. And you had, I would say, Hebert maybe on his heels at one point or leaning the wrong way where you couldn't make that adjustment as quick. And so you added Durkin with the extra body. This is a good example, and it has to be said, of David Critchley having a positive tactical game plan implemented, not just at the beginning of the game, but that tactical change that occurred at halftime is what you want to see out of a manager in these game situations.
Yeah, that was a great adjustment for the second half. But I think at the same time, it's something that was here on the chat. I think it was one of the Aarons that knowing that, yeah, it was. I think it was Aaron Lee. It was the last one, I think. Since there was a lot of stoppage time in the first half, and we probably were a few minutes ahead, we also knew that they just needed the draw, and as you mentioned, they bunkered down a little bit more. But it was a good adjustment by City. Basically, I don't recall any clear chances from RSL on the second half, and it was more City just trying to find that equalizer. Was an exciting second half for sure.
And the stats back this up. City in the second half had like 59% possession. So RSL was clearly even doing less counterattacking, less willingness to put themselves into dangerous positions to give up a counterattack on their own to St. Louis. I want to give credit. Critchley mentioned Vollum and Totland, and he also went deeper into the fullbacks, saying we've done a great job in the first half utilizing Conrad and Tots in the attack. So the more you use your fullbacks in the attack, the more you might be vulnerable to transitions, transition moments, or defending with a 2v2 or 2v1. But Critchley went on to say something I told the guys at halftime is I don't want to go now into the second half and have Tots and Conrad just drop on the back line and be really reserved. We felt like we had a massive amount of success talking about the wings and the wing play and how he manages those three players, Durkin and the fullbacks. The messaging, according to Critchley, was to keep Tots and Conrad higher to create 2v1s in those wider lanes and then put the responsibility on Chris Durkin, Falou Fall, Kyle Hebert to just make sure that in the second half, Olatunji, Luna, they had no time, no space. And I think you saw a much more aggressive trio with them three in the second half, and that's why we limited them to chances. So I think seeing how they scored the goals, obviously you don't want to allow those, but at least Critchley had an answer to that. And this helps build the case of what he's capable of doing as a city manager in that kind of scenario where he runs out a starting 11 that he's confident with, but he sees a noticeable issue. We all saw the noticeable issue with center backs. And so he added he implemented a change to fix that. And it didn't cripple our attack. He didn't remove Totland or Vollum from what they were doing in the attack otherwise. He was able to see, all right, we have an ability through the midfield. Edu Leuven had a fantastic game in the midfield as far as being a pivot, directing the ball. I'll talk about his passing stats in just a minute. But taking Chris Durkin, giving him a more defined role defensively, if anything, I think this really reinforces our need for a six, a tried and true six who can stay back and help in those defensive areas where you could be a sweeper, you could be in between the center backs, you can drop as far back as you need to, and you're not removing a key piece from the attack if you continue to have a quality attack exist with the other players. Looking at Leuven, looking at Hartle, Songbin, Klaus, Joyner, you keep those players strong and you leverage our wings appropriately, that six becomes all the more important of a position to fill for next year.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and he watched the game. He lives in Colombia, but he was like, the team needs some defensive adjustments. So like, yeah, the number six, everybody is asking for. So we'll see what happens in the off season. But yeah, it was a good adjustment, and if Dorkin stays there, he can be good. But I still think whether he stays or not, we still need that number six. Not sure now. We don't know if it's gonna be a DP or a U22, but hopefully that's one of the positions that the team will be looking for in the off season. And Chrisley made some remarks on his post game availability. He was asked like, hey, if you are staying, what positions will you try to improve? And he wasn't very specific, but he was like, yeah, we know we need to make some adjustments in defense, where it is a number six or center backs, or like he basically mentioned all the positions. But I think the number six is where the team will be looking someone for.
And last note, really quick, before we get into the bad and the couple of goals that happened, Jerry Hayes does mention in the chat, what about that red hue glowing from Conrad's head? Conrad has a new do, and it's inescapable to point out the timeliness of his new do and how perfectly aligned his new hairstyle is and the coloring of that with the city red. And if you're a player who's expecting to leave St. Louis, it's an interesting time to have that change. So obviously correlation without causation necessarily, but it is an interesting and noteworthy thing.
And he said he wants to stay.
He said he wants to stay. And Critchley talked about how valuable he was on that left back side. Vollum is historically a wing back or a midfield role. So a traditional fullback, but it is a little bit different for him, and he's gotten used to it this season more and more. But we also don't employ our fullbacks as traditional fullbacks regularly. So there's I would love to see Vollum again. I don't think as a DP I think that's off the table, but if we can pull him in multi-year deal with a transfer fee that gets him under the DP tag, maybe a TAM or a high TAM player, I'm game for Cannavaro.
Hey, maybe that's done too, and that's why the Bürki announcement was made, and he will not need to be a DP. We'll see.
Oh, everything. So Diego making all these moves with his existing players happen. Not that doesn't mean that he's stepping directly into the sporting director role full time, but there's a difference between identifying Diego and Hackworth, identifying the existing players you have and that you want to bring back, versus scouting and bringing in brand new players. There is a difference, and I think that's the line that they're towing right now.
I agree, and if it's players that you already know that they do well in the system, you need to do a full evaluation. Yeah, why not finish the business that you need to do there? But yeah, I think the comment what you mentioned earlier about Diego being the new sporting director, I think that's out of line.
Agreed. So the only bad thing that I had marked down was the center back play. The center back pairing early on was rusty at best. Flue Fall, Kyle Hebert are not a traditional center back pairing in the sense of the personnel. They're not used to each other in game situations. They, as far as I can tell from seeing training, they don't train together as primary center backs. So there are things to get used to. We knew Flue Fall is a little more ambitious, I would say. He's not a stay-at-home center back like a Henry Kessler is. He's a player who will go, not unlike Chris Durkin, I guess, if you want to make a correlation. He'll go on his walkabouts, as Phil likes to say, where Flue Fall very aggressively moved over to the left. And so that's where we'll transition into the goals. 17 minutes, RSL started it off with, I believe, their second shot in general in the game, from what I said earlier, 2 minutes and then 17. This was on an RSL goal kick where it happened. St. Louis pressed high on the left, so you had Makai Joyner really leading that press to the ball handler. Leuven even pressed up to the 18-yard box. Chris Durkin was chasing Diego Luna in RSL's defensive third still, so you get a lot of bodies pressing up on St. Louis's left side. Diego Luna gets the ball over to Gozo, or the ball falls to Gozo after kind of up in the air. And then it was played over to Brian Ojeda on the left, and then back to Gozo streaking down the left wing on an underlap. A quick feed to Olatunji in transition, and it was in. But the things that made up this goal were the high pressing that St. Louis did, but it was a breakdown in center back responsibility as Flue Fall was trying to attack Brian Ojeda over on the left side, right near the touchline. And then when Ojeda was able to make a one-touch pass to Gozo, streaking past him, once that pass was connected, it was kind of all over from there. Hebert was the only man back, and he was very much, I would say, outside of City's defensive third, way high up on the field. Thomas Totland on the right side was completely out of the picture because of how far away he was from the entire scenario. And so Olatunji had space for days on Roman Bürki. This isn't anything Bürki could have stopped. I think given the fact that how much space Olatunji had and the lack of anybody actually closing in on him. And so this was a play that it was the downside of St. Louis's high press. It was the downside of what could happen when your high press is beat. And almost every single player, including Flue Fall, your center back, bites on trying to be aggressive and create a turnover rather than playing a defender as they're coming at you towards goal and trying to block or clear the ball at that point.
Yeah, and Chrisley mentioned it. It was one of those plays where the press broke, and RSL very good taking that moment and transitioning quickly with quick touches. And yeah, like maybe Fall could have waited a little longer, even Heber. But that's where you start. In other games, we have said, why are they like trying to track back and don't try to attack the shooter? So it's one of those things. You have to make that decision, and that's the decision that was made by both Flue Fall and Kyle Heber. But I think it goes back to what Edu Leuven mentioned, that at times the team gave a lot of space. And yeah, that's what happened when that press breaks. The team needs to continue working on moments like that. But yeah, nothing Bürki could do. It was a good finishing by Olatunji, and he did it twice. I know we're gonna speak about the second goal soon, but yeah, that's what you do when you have a number 9 like that can finish plays when he has the space and time.
And we might as well get right into it because it was RSL's next shot. They had 2, then 17 minutes, then 32 minutes. It was Victor Olatunji again, this time from Diogo Goncalves. Goncalves. Loose ball was in RSL's outside third, bounced around a little bit until Makai Joyner came up with it near midfield. Joyner goes down. So we think Joyner's he's fouled. He's trying to draw a foul. He's going down, feeling like he was fouled. If you notice, as Joyner goes down, Falou Fall kind of is in the area calling for a foul, thinking it should have been called a foul. But what ends up happening is no call on that. City loses the ball in their attacking end. So we eventually progress the ball up. But I think it's a Leuven pass up to Conrad Wallem that gets broken up. And then from there, it's quick. Justin Glad recovers it, passes to Diogo Goncalves a few yards up in the midfield, and then Diogo gets the ball with a massive through ball past just about everybody. I mean, this was a quality through ball. I mean, you got to tip the cap to that. Olatunji then gathers it through Hebert and Falou Fall, where, like I said, Falou Fall was up a little bit near Mackay Joyner, near midfield. Took his foot off the gas a little bit, maybe, in what he was attempting to do. Kyle Hebert couldn't keep up with him, and then Olatunji had a clear shot on goal for his brace.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. When Mackay Joyner was fouled, like City kept possession, but they lost it quickly, and a lot of times the referee, when that happens, they will call the foul, but he let play continue, and I even thought, okay, maybe on the video review they will catch it that there was a foul previous to their play, but none of that was looked at. But it's still, I think those are the moments. Like, yeah, don't wait until the foul is called. Like don't lose time trying to get the referee's attention. If the foul wasn't called, you could get back to business and try to defend as best you can. But I think there was a little bit of distraction, and RSL took advantage of City being out of position to score the second goal just 32 minutes into a game, and things didn't really look good at that time.
No, and I guess from Falou Fall's perspective, he's 21 years old. He's new to MLS. Maybe not every referee calls it this way, where they give that level of advantage and they don't bring it back once the ball's turned over, because it was turned over kind of quickly after that play. It wasn't like it developed for 20, 30 seconds. So I can see him as that his knee-jerk reaction, but that's a lesson learned and what he'll need to do and how to navigate the MLS refereeing waters. Critchley was very much not going to take the bait post-game, saying he's not going to make it about the referees and decisions. He said, if I disagree with a few of them tonight, he didn't bring the goal back. And then when we just got caught in transition, we got to clean up those moments for sure next year. Those are moments that are easily cleanable. And I agree with him. I mean, Falou Fall, as he gains experience in this league, that maybe knee-jerk reaction of just waiting because he thinks it'll get called back, that'll get cleaned up. And so nothing long-term to worry about that for me. But we didn't have a 2-0 lead or deficit for very long, at least. It was 17, then 32. And then at 42, it was St. Louis getting one back. PK that was initially given after a Marcel Hartl cross from the left side, just outside the 18-yard box. Hartl crosses it over the box into Thomas Totland, who's back post. Totland heads it to Klaus, pretty close to him. Klaus shoots on goal, and it's deflected by Brian Vera, center back for Real Salt Lake. And Vera's eventually called for a handball as it hits his arm. After he's called for the handball, there's a conversation that occurs between Marcel Hartl and Edu Leuven at the spot. And it appears the conversation is who's going to take this. Post-game, I believe Critchley alluded to the fact that they ran PK scenarios or they were taking shots on Bürki, and it was Leuven at training this week who was taking those shots. Now, Leuven and Hartl have the conversation. Who knows what's in the conversation, but we do know that Marcel Hartl is currently sitting on 9 goals this season. We don't know what that might have to do with it, as far as double digits sound cool. An incentive in a contract sounds even cooler if that were to be a component. Pure speculation, absolute pure speculation on this. But end of the day, what ended up happening is Marcel Hartl takes the PK and it's saved by Cabral. But Cabral at the same point, after playing mind games with Marcel Hartl, kind of airing over to the right, kind of trying to get in his head, Cabral comes off his line, very clearly comes off his line. And it's not Marcel Hartl who takes the second PK. It's Edu Leuven who steps up. Edu Leuven steps up to take it. And Cabral, to his credit, guesses right. He guessed the right location, but Leuven, with the absolute tree trunk leg power that Edu Leuven has, I mean, he blasted that top bin left side past Cabral to have the deficit. And that's the power Edu Leuven can have from the spot.
Yeah, and Cabral, before Hartel took the shot, my partner on the broadcast, Hector Vega, he was saying this is not gonna work. He's gonna miss it because the way Cabral defends penalties, he stays until the last second. So the way that Hartel takes them is not gonna work. He's not gonna trick him. And then there you go. But then Edu Lubel said, "Okay, you had your chance. Now I'm gonna." Take mine. So I'm good. I'm glad that in the end that say by Cabral was called back, and then Leuven had the second chance because I think a lot of people would have been angry and disappointed if City had gone to halftime down 2 goals, and who knows what what would have happened on the second half.
Yeah, so they go into halftime. Possession was 50-50. St. Louis was winning in the XG 1.74 to 0.71, and some of that were the PK opportunities. Overall, 11 shots to 4. RSL had one extra shot on target, 3-2. You had St. Louis again controlling the opposition half, the final third, the touches in the opposition box, 20-2 touches in the opposition box in the first half. So this isn't just second half RSL bunkering. It's St. Louis consistently putting the pressure on from the get-go, and that being how the first half story was being told. In the second half, most of the things started off with, substitutions. There were shot opportunities, there were back and forths that continued to happen, but you get a 2-1 advantage by RSL. They're holding on to that. St. Louis is consistently limiting their chances, so the possession numbers start to skew towards St. Louis. Momentum skews towards St. Louis a lot more in the second half. And you get back and forth subs. You have 65 minutes. Diego Luna exits. That's a noteworthy
Finally.
one. You remove him from the playing field, and that's huge. So yeah. I don't usually dwell too much on opposition subs, but Diego Luna leaving at 65 was noteworthy.
Well, I think RSL's coach knew he was going to get a red card eventually. He should have gotten one earlier, twice. I don't know why when they went to the video review, the outcome was a yellow card. I don't think that's how video review works.
Was this the Songbin inside the box foul?
No, it was one earlier on the first half that Luna hit. I think it was Chris Dorkin. And Chris Dorkin got a yellow card.
Oh, they were tied up in the midfield.
And then the referee was called back to look at the play for aggressive conduct.
Where he almost hit Dirk in the face.
And to me, it looked like he did.
Yeah.
But the outcome was a yellow card, which is something I have never seen on video review.
Yeah, that's a weird.
If you're reviewing for red card, it's a yes or no. I don't think you can just say, "Oh, it's yellow card."
He did that. It was bad, but it wasn't bad. Like, that was a weird result. Yeah. So yeah, Luna got lucky, I think, on that. But at 65, he exited. 72, you get Mackay Joyner exiting, and this is the important part as far as the City 2 thing goes. Tomas Ostrak comes in for Mackay Joyner, and in my eyes, I saw Ostrak take kind of a roaming role. It was kind of like for like at times, but Ostrak was more willing to come deeper into the field in the central mid on the left side than Mackay Joyner was. But Joyner leaves at 72. So if you're thinking about City 2 and you're talking about the 90 minutes per weekend that players might have who are these tweeners, Joyner might be up for 15 to 20 minutes for City 2. That's a possibility. More subs happen. RSL, 83 minutes. St. Louis subs, Betcher, Padelford, and Morales in for Leuven, Totland, and Durkin. Devin Padelford came in at left back, moved Conrad Wallem over to right back. Tomas Ostrak dropped in, and Simon Betcher took a forward position. Alfredo Morales, obviously, at central midfield for that stability. And then just a few minutes later, 88 minutes, this is where the magic happens. The ball is played. Well, first of all, this sequence of events happens, and then there was kind of a stoppage in play. So the ball was played up from Betcher to Padelford on an underlap on City's left side. It was knocked out of bounds by Yedlin. RSL makes a defensive-minded sub, taking out Goso, and Devin Padelford has a throw-in. And our friend Tom Schwartz, we haven't talked to him yet, but he is no doubt pleased as a fiddle on Devin Padelford's throw here, and we're probably going to hear about it until next season starts. Devin Padelford throws the ball in from the touchline near the corner. He makes it to Falou Fall about at the 6-yard box. And Falou Fall has a header that goes behind him. Klaus has a header that goes to the side of him. And it just kind of slow motion falls past Cabral over into the far corner. And St. Louis equalizes at 88.
The long throw in finally worked. We had not seen that in a while, just because Belfort didn't play against Austin, and then there was a break. But yeah, when he was ready to throw that in, I was like, maybe this is the one time it will work. There have been a couple more in earlier games that I think we hit the first ball, but it didn't end up in somebody creating a shot. But it was great to see finally that play working. Fall did a great job, and yeah, as you said, as you mentioned, it was like in a slow motion that ball went in. But I think it went in because Brendan McSorley was trying to get it. If he had not been there, maybe the defender could have gotten to it. But
so he's pulling the defender away.
Yeah. So it was at some point I thought maybe he touched it, but no, he did not. But the fact that he went and pulled the defender away, I think that helped for that slow motion ball to go in and get the equalizer. And then I thought there was gonna be more magic, but in the end it was a draw.
Was this the goal that Critchley gave credit to Alex Langer post game? Because I think
it has to be.
Yeah, there was a goal that Critchley credited Alex Langer post game, and I think this was it.
Yeah, it was that one.
The set piece specialist, Alex Langer, goalkeeper coach. Yeah. So they drew something up for Devin Padelford on these long throw opportunities. So that's how we ended it. 2-2 draw. RSL, I think, had one shot there in stoppage time, but St. Louis salvages a point after being down 2. And this, like, take a step back for a second. How different of a narrative is this from there for the longest stretch under Olaf and David Critchley, where we were the ones who couldn't hold a lead. We were the ones who we would lose 3 points multiple games because we were allowing all these goals after 70, 75, 80 minutes. And teams were just, and at the end of the day, we missed the playoffs by 9 points.
Yeah.
How many games did it take? Possibly just 3 or 4 of those where we were bleeding goals at the end of the game. Now we're the team that, against a playoff team, RSL, we were able to come back from a 2-0 deficit just 32, 36 something minutes into the game and claw back a point. That's noteworthy to me. And that embodies a lot of what David Critchley has been able to do to this team, and why I say now, after this result, now all is said and done, we can have our hot takes. I do think David Critchley has done enough that he should be named as permanent manager of St. Louis City. Whether you say it's a 1-year deal with options, whether you say it's whatever, how long of a leash you're willing to give him, I think the job should be his. Talking to some people at City Sprint 5K, it's best said to me, and I agree with this, that Critchley has done enough down the stretch, consistently getting better, turning things around from what Olaf had. He has the players on his side. He is tactically doing better, that you would have to be extraordinarily sure of yourself to replace him with someone. And I go back to what happened last season with Hackworth and Olaf, where Hackworth had gotten them to a position that it was markedly better. The team was spinning. They were running on all cylinders, and Hackworth had the technical director job. So there's a little extra of nuance there, but you replace him with somebody that you think could do a better job, and he absolutely doesn't, rather than continue that momentum. So finishing this season, did David Critchley do enough to win the job? Well, let's look at the final stat line. Through his 19 total games as head coach, David Critchley has taken 21 points. That's a 1.105 points per game. Not great, but that's 19 games. That's the full body of work, including what he took off from Olaf Melberg right from his get-go. In his last 13 games, 17 points up to a 1.31 points per game. The last 10 games, 14 points, up to a 1.4 points per game. The last 6 games, 11 points, up to a 1.83 points per game. And this year, a 1.29 points per game would put you in 7th place. Critchley's been better than that for his last 13 games. 3 teams finished with a 1.21, 9th in the final spot, including RSL and a few teams that tied them. Critchley in his last 13 games was better than all of that. He would have been a playoff team in just his last 13 games, let alone his last 10-6. So I get that the sample size is shrinking, and this has been the conversation always, that sample size is shrinking as you get closer to the present. But the fact is, he's consistently turned this team around to the point where they're building and getting better and more points per game in these recent stretches. And I think that is enough, because at the end of the day, what did he take over from Olaf as well? And that's part of the narrative on why his full body is only at 1.105, and he ends the last 6 games with 1.83.
Yeah, and that's what not only him but other players have mentioned. Like, yeah, when he came in, there were a lot of things to fix, and that takes a while if you don't have a preseason. But I would have loved to see a win last night against a team that is playoff bound.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, if City will have won, RSL would have been out. But
Yeah,
I was hoping for that signature win. Maybe you can say the win against Nashville is that signature win. But yeah, good results down the stretch. I think um, a little bit of it is the schedule. Maybe easier teams. Then when you face LAFC, obviously they are in an upward trajectory, and to me, is one of the candidates to win MLS Cup. But you didn't have a good showing against them. But yeah, overall, I think he did a good job. Maybe the job was already his before last night. Unless like RSL would have like won like by 3-4 goals or something like that, maybe the decision could have been different. But the players are happy with what he has done, and I think the team learned from also last year. Like, Jaguar had the team in a good trajectory, although the team didn't finish the season on the best way. But I think they learned, like, why make another change right now if things are working with David Chrisley. Give him a chance next season, and at the same time you have an incoming sporting director that will give him time first to evaluate Chrisley's body of work.
Mm-hmm.
And if he likes it, he will keep him. If things don't go well first half of next season, maybe he will be ready to bring his guy and see what happens. But I think it's good to have that continuity, and the players have expressed it. They are happy with David Chrisley, so it's really hard to change a sporting director and coach within just a few months. So I'm okay with that.
And Critchley has gotten St. Louis back to the playing style that Diego and Hackworth wanted, and Lutz wanted City to be playing all along. So the style fit should be there in whoever Diego and Hack find, or Diego finds as a sporting director. Not worried about the style match between the sporting director and David Critchley. David Critchley, also the best City away manager now since Bradley Carnell back in early 2023. So he's got that under his belt, which has been a perennial issue for St. Louis, winning on the road. And now being able to have that in the last few weeks, month, 2 months, that's a big thing. I cannot but laugh in the chat. Aaron saying, noting Roman Bürki's right before City match re-signing, right before City 2 match, and in-stadium announcement that Critch is back. Video board hype up. Can't quite ask for much more. That would be incredible, first of all. But the pragmatist in myself tells me that we're not going to get that kind of announcement until after the sporting director, which could occur as early as this week. So as it stands now, to put a bow on 2025 for the moment, at least after this final game, St. Louis finished in 13th place in the West, 9 points out of the final playoff spot on an 8-18-8 record, 8 wins, 18 losses, 8 draws, with 32 points in 34 games and a 0.88 points per game overall. Now, not just all the giveaways we had after 75 that cost us maybe those 9 points, but listen to those points per game again. Overall, this entire season in 34 games, 0.88 points per game. Critchley's 19 was 1.105, and talking 1.31, 1.4, 1.83 cents. How bad things were before Critchley took over. That's a good example.
The points per game during Melberg's tenure was 0.73 in 15 games.
Abysmal. That's disgusting. I never want to talk about that again, even though we're probably going to have to when we look at this entire season a little bit. And we did finish ahead of Sporting KC, who actually finished at the bottom of the table.
That's not any consolation.
But bottom of the table is a laughing.
No, wooden spoon, but bottom of the table in the conference.
No, the wooden spoon this year goes to
United,
the current team of former City players.
Oof.
Jared Stroud, Lucas Bartlett, and Jose Kojima. Sorry to our friend Soccer Zombie, who is a Jose Kojima diehard, but he couldn't make it work in DC this year. And DC United gets the wooden spoon with 26 points in 34 matches. Sporting KC has 28 points. LA Galaxy finished with 30 points, just 2 below us. So interesting finish to the season. And that just goes to show you that no matter what the narratives are, things can change quickly in this league. Every match matters, and it can change on a dime. So we'll be back later this week to talk about the recap to the season and hopefully have some news. But there are a lot of things that City has to take care of in this offseason. We have a sporting director, we have a head coach, we have player options. Among them, we have Klaus, Chris Durkin, Song Bin Jong as player options to either pick up or decline. We have a Conrad Wallem loan situation to follow. We have a Devin Padelford loan situation to follow to see if he's just gone or if we'll have any kind of negotiations with Minnesota. Other options include Brendan McSorley, Alfredo Morales, Josh Yarrow, and a few other supplemental players. Haziel Orozco's got one. So
Akil Watts
has one. A lot of things to discuss. As soon as one of those breaks, we'll be back with Flyover Footy to talk about it. But at the very least, tune in later this week when we're coming back to deep dive this season, talk about all the good, all the bad, answer any questions. And like I said, if there's news to break, we'll talk about it then. And stick with us during the off season as news breaks. Like I said, we will be here to cover it. Santi, anything else before we go?
No, looking forward to City 2 this afternoon. Hope to see a lot of people there again.
And it should be a beautiful day. I love the juxtaposition in weather between the end of City. I was talking to Jeremy Tripp from the club after the race, that downpour, storms, lightning for the final City game, almost one last just kick us while we're down moment. And then as soon as that game ends, the rain clears. Today is just an absolutely beautiful day for City 2, who's having the inverse of a season, best team in their entire league. And we get sunny blue skies, great weather, and their first playoff game against Ventura County.
And even for the race, I will have been miserable running in the rain.
So hope to see everybody out there for City 2. If you're watching us live, and if you're listening to us later on, hopefully City 2 wins and we get more playoff games, because we do have home field advantage throughout the playoffs for as long as we go, because we had the best record. Hoping against hope that we get more and more matches. I'm not going to jinx anything by going too much further than that, but more City 2 matches this fall is only a good thing. So Santi, I think that's it for us. Thank you for joining us on Flyover Footy for this final fallout of 2025. We'll look at a 2-2 draw against RSL. For Santiago Beltran, I'm Matt Baker. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
Vamos City!
All right, folks, thanks for sticking with us. If you want to listen to this, or if you want to have any friends listen to this, it'll be up at some point later tonight, but we have a Sunday to go enjoy. So hope you have a great rest of the day. If you see us at City 2, say hi, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, everyone.